Hello and welcome to this edition of the program. Well, of course, as is our tradition, we shall be igniting discussions that challenge, inspire, and empower. I am Imoni Amarire. Now, last week, the Global Network Against Food Crises released its latest report on food situation with a call for a transformative action and approach that integrates peace, prevention, and development alongside emergency efforts to break the cycle of high levels of acute hunger. The report says nearly 282 million people in 59 countries and territories experienced high levels of acute hunger in 2023, with 1 in 5 people in need of critical, urgent action. The figure, according to the report, represents an increase of 24 million from the previous year, 2022. It says that although the number of people facing acute food crises has been on the rise for 5 years, over 705,000 people were on the brink of famine in 5 countries and territories in 2023 alone. It identifies the interlinked drivers of food insecurity as conflicts, wars, and violence, which affected 135 million people, climate change, which affected 77 million people, forced displacements of populations, and impacts of economic shocks, which affected about 75 million people. It says these drivers are exacerbating fragile food systems, rural marginalization, poor governance, and inequality. The report shows that children and women bear more of the brunt of the hunger crisis, as over 36 million children under 5 years of age are acutely malnourished across 32 countries. Now, according to the outlook, the current situation in the Gaza Strip, for instance, where 2.3 million people account for 80% of those facing imminent famine. Now, alongside the Democratic Republic of Congo, where 26 million people are facing famine. Sudan, where 20 million people are also facing famine. South Sudan, Burkina Faso, Somalia, Mali, and of course Haiti is not left out. In Haiti, about 5 million people are facing starvation. Now, ironically, while the global north is experiencing food waste, famine and starvation are ravaging most of the global south. Yet, another challenge for the food system is what is referred to as the industrialization of food and agricultural systems, which does not produce balanced nutrition. The Global Report on Food Crises is a multi-stakeholder initiative of the Global Network Against Food Crises, comprising the United Nations, the European Union, the United States Agency for International Development, and a lot of other stakeholders. This report is the focus of our discussion on the program. We shall also attempt to drill it down to the food situation in Nigeria. And I have joining me in the studio at the moment to discuss all of these issues, Dr. William Mafwalal. He is the acting head of program of Oxfam. Thank you so much, Dr. Mafwalal, for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Also joining us is Mr. Peter Oguda. Mr. Oguda is the program coordinator, Civil Society for Poverty Eradication, CISCOP. Thank you, Mr. Oguda, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We're also joined by an agricultural specialist, Mr. Tom Odemige. Thank you so much for finding time to join us.
Thank you.
Right. Okay, let's go on a very short break, and when we return, we'll be diving straight into our discussion.
Nigeria of our dream, the Nigeria we need, is the united, indissoluble, and cohesive Nigeria, which guarantees equity, fairness, justice, and prosperity for its citizens. That is our focus on people, politics, and power. It is fresh, insightful, impactful. It's a must-watch. People, politics, and power on AIT. To Nigeria's democratic process.
Politicians can only be seen maybe on television by judges. They should not intermingle, because once you intermingle, then you destroy the systems.
When the personalities are big, important to national discourse.
When you reach certain stage in power and you demonstrate arrogance to the extreme, there's no other thing that will happen to you other than to fall.
When the developments are seemingly complex, confounding like a 1,000-piece jigsaw, that's when we require bold, sound, and analytical minds to help put the pieces together. Jigsaw with Benga Arileba, now showing Tuesdays and Thursdays at 1 p.m. on AIT. Jigsaw, demystifying the issues.
All right, thank you so much for staying with us. Our focus is on the 2024 global food crisis, which, of course, is the offshoot of a report that was put together by a multi-stakeholder group, including the United Nations, the European Union, and, of course, the United States Agency for International Development, amongst many others. And that report is sounds very alarming. Indeed, it gives the impression that over 282 million people across the world are in danger of a food crisis, and hunger and famine and starvation are just around the corner. Dr. William Mafualal is the lead program manager on food security and humanitarian response of Oxfam Nigeria. And, of course, Peter Oguda, program coordinator, civil society for poverty eradication, CISCOP, and they are joined by Mr. Tom Odemike, who is an expert on agricultural matters. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. So let me begin, Mr. Oguda, with you, asking you what was your response, or what is your response to this report? It's a 2024 report, but speaks a lot about 2023.
Yeah, the first thing we need to put into consideration is that the world is experiencing a lot of issues. And if you look at that report very well, copiously, it speaks to the issues of insecurity, which is one of the key drivers of food insecurity globally. And it resonates with us in Nigeria as well. If you look at our CADA harmonization report in 2024 this year, insecurity is one of the major issues. And I am not really surprised that issues in 2023 are being brought up in 2024. But the major issue there is that the food crisis is being driven further, especially in Nigeria. The global report speaks to countries in Africa that we know have been in crisis for a very long time. I don't have time to go through the report yet in details. I didn't see Nigeria being mentioned. But if you look at the CADA harmonization report, Nigeria shares all the indices that has been written in that report: insecurity, misgovernance, inflation, as well as climate change issues. So these are issues that are the key drivers of food crisis globally, as well as Nigeria and in sub-Saharan Africa, as it were. And let's not forget also, in the center of all this crisis, there's issue of governance. Governance has to play a key role in ensuring that the enabling environment has to be put in place to ensure key actors perform their role. Because private sector are one of the key drivers to bring the change that we want to see. But if the enabling environment is not there, we will not see actors playing their role the way it should be. Another instance is early, I think last year, the federal government declared Nigeria as emergency, a kind of an emergency, state of emergency on food, a crisis in Nigeria. I think nothing has been done towards that regard, as it were, currently. So it's for me, as somebody who's in the field, working with community, working with donor agencies, supporting vulnerable communities across the country, I would tell you that we still have a lot to do in terms of sharpening our policies, bringing the key actors together on board to ensure that we nip this in the bud, especially with regard to the latest latest cadre harmonization reports, which also speak directly to what the global report is talking about today.
We'll come back to the cadre harmonization report, but Dr. Williams, this report talks about food crisis. It talks about acute food crisis, acute food, hunger. What is the difference between these two?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. The difference is in the level at which people are affected by this crisis in terms of the effect of the food crisis. It is acute because it is coming at a very high pitch, and a lot of people are affected, and that is why it is acute. And when you look at it, like Peter have said, it has a lot. There are a lot of indicators that speak into that. And Nigeria being, part of the global system, and the globe being a village now, we cannot remove Nigeria from the context of the food insecurity that we are facing globally. And I quite agree with Peter on the fact that good governance or governance is at the center of all this. And I like also the approach that our government took by declaring emergency on food. And of course, Oxfam as an organization have been working on this sector for quite a while now. We pushed very hard to ensure that Nigeria has a law in place that no Nigerian should go to bed hungry. That is the act that was signed in by the last administration towards the end of the administration, and where it made food a right in Nigeria. So citizens of Nigeria have the right to be able to ask government of what they are doing to ensure that they don't go to bed hungry, because there is a law in place that stops Nigerians from going to bed hungry. And that is the kind of action we want to see. But then, like Peter said, to what extent have that been put into action by the duty bearers so that Nigerians can feel this impact? Because when you look at it, the report speaks entirely on what is happening in Nigeria. Whether or not we like it, we are seeing it every day. It's facing us every day. That food is now becoming a very, very critical issue for Nigerians today to be able to afford to have food on the table. And so Nigerians will not look away and say it's a global report. Nigeria is not mentioned. Nigeria is also part of the global system, and Nigeria is also going through the same challenges that the whole world is facing in terms of food insecurity. And of course, the acuteness of it speaks to the issue of the emergency that is required by all parties involved to ensure that this is tamed as quickly as possible, because it's already a crisis of monumental effect when we look at it.
In fact, beyond crisis, acute crisis, there's a new terminology now: catastrophic
Crisis.
Food crisis.
Yes, of course.
Now, fill us in on that. I mean, when does it get to a catastrophic level? Does it move from a mere crisis to acute crisis and then to catastrophic levels?
It is catastrophic because you see people dying. People are dying because they don't have food to eat today. In Nigeria today, it's no more news that you see people in garbage areas sorting out garbage to find food. We've seen videos of such happening. That is catastrophic, because people now can do anything to be able to make sure that they have food to eat. It is catastrophic because if you have food in your house, you are not also safe, because people can break into your home to not steal anything but to get food. That is catastrophic, because it has pushed people to that extent that they can do anything to be able to have food to eat. So it is a very serious situation. Like Peter said, we must put all efforts in place to ensure this is tamed before it goes out of hand.
Mr. Demige, let me bring you into the discussion now and to say, okay, let us drill it in from the global level to the African and then the Nigerian level. the picture that is painted by this global report on food insecurity appears to suggest that there are parts of the global south, many parts of the global south, that cannot access enough food to feed their populations. Whereas in the global north, they are talking of food wastage.
Well, a while ago, when you were reacting to the presentation, you said it sounded alarming. And I was wondering, why should it sound alarming? Doesn't the Nigerian situation, is it not serious enough for you to even see the alarm that is ringing? Well, the point is this: it doesn't matter whether Nigeria is not mentioned in that report. We know, we who live in Nigeria, we feel it, we know that there is a crisis. It may well be a failure of some of our institutions that they were not able to feed material into that report. It may well be that maybe there was a call for a report and it didn't come, and the world will not wait for you. And in any case, we have institutions that are supposed to be generating this kind of report to warn us about what is going to happen. There's what we call the early warning system. Did we see this coming? We should have said, yes, we saw this coming 5 years ago. It's just that we didn't take the next steps. So the whole idea of declaring a state of emergency, it's a kind of lip service, I beg to say, because you don't see much that's been done to demonstrate that we do have a food crisis, and that we are taking actions to get out of that crisis. So it could be a mirror for every part of Nigeria. There's no part of Nigeria that's not in dire straits in terms of the food availability. These days, the best, you have to be very careful to organize a party and display food. You're going to have people coming to scramble for the food. So people now go to event centers where you have security, much security, to ward off people who otherwise would have come in to help themselves. So that's the kind of what catastrophe. The catastrophe that we're talking about. So we have to do something better.
Mr. Guda, I mean, for someone like who is on the field, let's begin to look at, say, the figures. I mean, in the global report, figures are mentioned for specific countries. But like Mr. Daniel said, maybe Nigeria did not feed into that report for it to be captured properly. Yeah. But for you who is on the field, let's look at the kind of scenario, the kind of figures that we're looking at in Nigeria. Are there places in Nigeria where there is famine? Are there places where there is acute food insecurity? Are there places where people are just managing to survive?
Well, as a Nigerian even, I think the reports, the global reports, like I said earlier on, speaks directly to Nigeria's issue. Let's take the cadre harmonization for this year. As at March this year, the report was made public. Early this year, it was reported that 18 million people are malnourished, are food insecure in Nigeria. But moving to the lean season, which is from June to August, we are going to be witnessing an increase. About 21 million Nigerians, 26 million Nigerians will be food insecure. Out of that number, 9 million children are malnourished in Nigeria. Out of that 9 million, about 4 or 5 million are in severe states of malnutrition. So you can go on and on. And if you look at the Bay states, the Borno, Adama, and Yobe, where we have incidents of insurgency for over a decade now, that happens to be one of the food baskets of the nation. What is happening there? People can no longer farm because of insecurity. And because they cannot produce, definitely it's going to affect them. So as we speak, they also have a share of their own food insecure situation in the Northeast. Then you go to the Northwest, another food basket of the nation, where states like Zamfara, Sokoto, and Katsina used to be where cereals are being grown in this country. Today they can't farm because of insecurity. That also has huge impact. Malnutrition, food insecurity. You will now come down to the North Central, states like Nasarawa, Plateau, Benue, Niger, where normally these are food baskets of the nation as well. Today, lots of them cannot go to the farm because there's insecurity. And when you juxtapose it with issues of climate change, we have erratic climatic conditions like flood, dry spell, and you also look at the issues of the rising inflation and food costs. Definitely, you could see that the figures in Nigeria is so alarming. One thing I like about statistics is that it tries to give you a picture, but that does not mean it's the true picture of what is happening. Today, I can tell you that in the Northeast where I operate, North Central where I operate majorly, a lot of people are going hungry. And that figure is just a small piece of what the actual rate is in the figure on ground. Because we go to the field every day, and what we see in the field speaks volume. It's even beyond what the report is saying. But be that as it may, we have a report, we have documents to work with. Why it was not captured in the global report, I don't know. Whether it was a deliberate effort, but I want to also align with Mr. Demige that it is not the business of the global community to seek for information from you if you don't want to feed into what they are doing. And besides, if you notice the countries that were mentioned in Africa in that report, countries from Africa, these are countries that have been in crisis for over 20 decades.
And mostly in the Sahel region.
Yes, in the Sahel region. So you can understand their own situation. Nigeria has a good topography, good water bodies, good land. We have governance system that is working, 25 years of uninterrupted democracy. So why should we not, why are we not able to handle our own issues the way it is? And maybe these are some of the reasons why the global community sometimes will overlook us, because it's generally understood that we can handle our own issues, even though as it stands today, it seems we cannot handle our own issues without the international community coming on board. But I can tell the whole world that the situation in the Northeast is not funny. People can't go to the farm. Forget some of the reports you read. A lot of communities cannot go to the farm because of insecurity. They are being kidnapped. Northwest the same thing, North Central the same thing. And it will surprise you that some of these farmers actually pay the bandits. They pay before they can harvest. They pay before they can even farm. So who bear the cost? The consumer incur the cost if the produce comes out at the end of the day. So these are issues that are multifaceted, and governments need to really sit up both at the local, national, state, local, and national level. They really need to work on this, because 10 years ago or 15 years ago, one of the key drivers does not have insecurity. It's just increased investment in the sector, prioritizing our policies, and ensure that these policies are being driven to the letter. But today we have a new kid in the board, which is insecurity. So we need to clear our land to ensure that our farmers are able to go back to the farm. And like my colleague said, these farmers are small-scale farmers. They are not asking for too much. Government they churn out different kind of policies year in, year out. A key example is the anchor borrower scheme of the last administration. Every right-thinking Nigeria should be weeping in his mind currently as we speak. Over ₦1 trillion was spent on that white elephant project. Who are these farmers that benefited from the anchor borrower scheme? Perhaps if that project were to be implemented successfully, we won't be talking about food insecurity in Nigeria. But as we know, in Nigeria, anything goes. So that money was just given to fictitious people who claim to be farmers, and they're not farmers across the country. I'm from Ibaji local government in Kogi State, one of the agrarian communities that is landlocked. No farmer, because I tried to do an analysis in that local government, no farmer in that local government benefited from the anchor borrower scheme. And I can tell you a lot of local LGAs in Nigeria where we have rural farmers, they never knew about what is called anchor borrower scheme. That money was shared among people in the urban cities who don't have any business with agriculture. And today, here we are. We are food insecure. So government needs to play its part, and they need to be seen doing it the way it should be.
Dr. William, when Mr. Ogoda talks about food insecurity, please break it down for me and for our viewers. What does that exactly mean? Because there are situations where people, you talked about people not going to bed hungry. That is a law in Nigeria. But we see a lot of Nigerians who go to bed hungry on a day-to-day basis, at least from his own account. Now, so what does it mean when we say a certain group of people are food insecure? Is it that they cannot have 3 square meals, or they have only 1 square meal in a day, or do not have even a square meal in a day.
Thank you very much. Let me add to what Peter have said, and I will come back to respond to what does it mean to be food insecure. What we're enjoying now from the Cadre Harmonisé is the production of last year. I can project to you that next year, the indices will be worse, because all these zones that produce the food, North Central, Northwest, Northeast, farmers are not able to go back to their farms now. They are all moved to IDP
camps
in cities. And so no one is going to produce the mass production of food for this year. So we'll just wait and see what the Cadre Harmonisé indices will be for next year. That is for the thinking. Now, what does it mean to be food insecure? When you say you are food insecure, that means you have issues with access to food. You have issues with ability to afford the food. You have issues with ability to even process the food. So these are all blocks of issues that make you food insecure. Accessibility means, yes, the food is there, you can have it. You can produce it or you can buy. But inability to process the food means that you have the food, you cannot process it in a way that it will be useful to your body because of cost, issues of fuel, issues of cost of producing, making the food ready for you to eat. And then, of course, we are looking at affordability as a factor as well. The food is there, but you can't afford it because of your level of economic situation that you are facing. So if you look at these indicators, most Nigerians are falling below the line on those issues of access, processing, and as well as what? Affording the food. Like Peter had said in his earlier presentation, our current inflation rate is a very huge factor. Most Nigerians today cannot access food. They cannot afford food because the prices of food in the market today have skyrocketed because people cannot go to the market and bring back food like they used to do. So we must work on those areas. We must do something to check that because production, we are going down. Affordability, we are going down. Preparation of the food, that is to make it affordable for people or palatable for people to use so that it can bring us that nutrient to produce the nutritious status in our bodies. People cannot afford it. So it's a big problem for us as a people. So we must work on those areas. And that is why many Nigerians are going to bed hungry today. And I'm calling on Nigerians to know that there is a law that your country have in place now, that you should not go to bed hungry, because if you go to bed hungry, you can take your government to court. That's what it means. People can now take the government to court and ask that they don't have food. And there is a law that says they shouldn't go to bed without eating food. Today in Nigeria, you hardly have families that have 3 square meals. You mentioned that. Hardly will you see families now having 3 square nutritious meals today. Most families are running programs like 011 or 101 or 001 because 1 means you have 1 meal out of the 3. So that is very there. And it's catastrophic, and we're already marching there. And what is scary for me, like Peter said, is next year, we don't know how it will look like. Because Benue, Plateau, Nasarawa, Niger, the Middle Belt axis, where they produce the mass food that takes care of a lot of Nigerians, is no-go area today. And people are not going to farms because they are scared for their lives. So government must make and take, put up a political will to ensure that there is security.
Please, can I just
yes, please, yes.
Well, this litigation is something that Nigerians, feel very uncomfortable about. One, it's expensive, and then secondly, whom are you going to take to court? What I'm saying is, yes, I was part of the formulation and eventual passing of the Right to Food Act, but we are looking for those who can support the implementation. It's not, an act will just be useless if it's not acted upon.
So in framing it, did you not think of those who can act on it?
Oh yes,
Who can
all
enforce it?
all the actions necessary are there in the act. But I'm saying you need support to put it into action. For instance, I don't think there's any community that really is aware that there is a law, that forbids them from going to Hungary.
Going to bed.
And I don't think there's any community that is aware of which government. Is it the local government you want to take to court? Is it the state government or is it the federal government? And who are the representatives that you want to take to court? I'm saying that in order for it not to be a joke, let us do some prioritization. Unfortunately, and this is the point that I've always made, that the government that is supposed to be in control of agriculture is not the one that is in control of agriculture. At the Ministry of Federal Ministry of Agriculture, they're talking about going to buy tractors and all that. That's not what should be happening. The local government should be put in charge of agriculture because that is the government closer to the people. That is the government of farming areas. When I was growing up, the district council used to be involved in agriculture, produce inspection, provision of seedlings and all
has that responsibility
establishment
been taken
of
away
farming,
from the local
of
governments?
farming centers and communities and all the rest. So, but local government has been so marginalized, so emasculated, that nothing is happening there. And then we're talking about hunger. And then we are expecting Abuja to be the one to feed people in Sokoto. It doesn't work that way. So let us sit down and come up with new priorities. For instance, the system of agriculture that we have always promised, this smallholder farm, it doesn't work any longer. Let us do a cooperative system. Let us support the cooperatives. When you support the cooperative, then you empower them. They are able to buy equipment that would ordinarily be out of the reach of the common person. So these are things we should commit resources to so that we can get better results. As far as I'm concerned, we're just behaving as usual. And when you have serious problems, you need new thinking. You need new ideas. We need people to invest in agriculture. People in the diaspora would like to invest in agriculture in their communities. But where's the expertise? Whom are they going to hand over the business to? Is it their relations? Do you hand over serious business to your relations? If he does anything wrong, are you going to take him to court or arrest him? Those are issues. But so when they say there is this emergency in food security,
state of emergency,
I just laugh. I'm sure they've all gone back to sleep since they declared emergency. And you ask yourself, what is the essence of that declaration? What are the follow-up actions? So we must get serious. Otherwise, this hunger will consume everybody.
Mr. Oguda, I want to think that agriculture is still a responsibility of both the federal, state, and even local government. It's on the concurrent legislative list. So why is it that it appears everything is left to the federal government to push?
Well,
or is it that the federal government is appropriating it to itself? I know that state governments have ministries of agriculture and local governments have departments of agriculture. So what are those departments and ministries doing?
Well, if you go to local government, any local government council in Nigeria today, people are not, it's not even functioning. Have we allowed our local governments to function properly? You go to any local government in Nigeria, the council chairman cannot even expend up to 2 million naira. He's at the whims and caprice of the state governor. So how do you expect him to work? And I've never been in government, but I can tell you what is happening because we work in rural communities. And only few states you go to that you see a semblance of local government administration.
There's no local government where they go to work more than 3 times a week.
They don't come to office. Some don't even have secretariat. Like in my local government where I come from in Kogi State, there's no secretariat. You can go there any day, Ibaji. There's no secretariat. So how do you expect? There's no manpower, they're not being trained, and salaries are not being paid. So that is the disdain with which the Nigerian institutions have treated have been treating the local government so far. Now you come to the states. Has corruption allowed the state governors even to operate? They are just there, they are demigods. The little gains you see in democracy today in Nigeria, it's my personal opinion anyway, is because of the role the federal government is even playing. And the federal government is on our toes because the international community are watching. So they take the hit. So they want to do things that will look seemingly civil in the eyes of the international community. But go down to the states, apart from maybe Lagos or Kaduna, Kano, Port Harcourt, where else? But if you go to some states, you weep. No road connection from the local governments to the state headquarters across the 774 local governments.
So even if
Yes,
there is production in those areas, they cannot evacuate them.
You can't evacuate. So farmers produce, and it goes into wastage. There's no storage facilities. There's no transport system. There's no processing. There's no marketing. And that's why one of the ideas I keep churning out always when we go to meetings like this or interacting at this kind of fora is it's okay. Agri should not be treated as a standalone because it feeds into other sectors. Is it health? Is it education? Is it even manpower? Name it. Is it business, industry, and the rest? So take, for instance, the Ministry of Works and Transportation. If we say in the next 4 years in Nigeria, the Minister for Works should prioritize 40% of road construction in Nigeria should be local-based. It should focus on rural communities. Same as rural electrification. We do that over a period of 10 years. You discover that we'll start having road networks connecting local governments to local government, ward from wards to local. In those days when I was growing up in secondary school, under a military administration, we used to have what we call the feeder roads under ADPs. So are we now saying that what worked well in the military administration that we so hate and said the military government is bad, that the democracy, now we're in democracy, we cannot take some of the good gains from the military administration. It seems the military administration gives priority to local administration in this country. Because since the return of democracy, local governance has been run to the background. So what I'm trying to say is that it is a deliberate plan by those people in power, always trying to run down the little efforts the ordinary citizens have to survive in this country. It's a deliberate thing, and that's why I anchored it on governance. Because food security issues has even become a weapon of warfare. I mean, it's disheartening that Ukraine, that is at war, recently brought food to Nigeria to support us with
Grains.
Grains. I mean, it's laughable. May we not wake up one day and discover that Gaza, that is in crisis today, will send aid, food aid to Nigeria. So our government should wake up. If you don't have any business in government, then don't go in. So this should be a clarion call to Mr. President and every other person who is serving in this government that Nigeria has land, we have water bodies, we have all the manpower that we need to put our system in place. But we keep sloganizing it. We keep playing with it. Our lackluster attitude, our unpatriotism, our corruption, everything that we do, we just pour in money and everything disappears. Nothing happens. And at the end of the day, it is our children, not us anymore. Our children are the ones that are going to bear the brunt, especially those of us who don't have enough money to become citizens of other countries or to fly out of this country. So that's why this thing is a patriotic, and I want to thank AIT and every other person who is taking this as an issue, so that we keep sensitizing our policymakers. We keep bringing this to their doorstep for them to know that it is their responsibility, above every other thing, to feed their citizens and ensure that everybody in Nigeria is food secure.
So how can this circle of food crisis be broken in Nigeria and globally? Mr. Demge.
Yes, I think we must have a strategy for instigate community response. It could be in terms of behavior change communication. A community has a responsibility to ensure that its people are fed. What does it take for the community to deliver on this? Let's not make it nebulous. Like I said, it's very charitable to the federal government that the federal government is doing more. That's what the whole world is saying. But I also believe that there are resources that are wasting at the federal level. that ought to be repatriated to states and local governments. Because there are so many things the federal government is doing that are not sustainable. Most of the silos, they are not working. Go to the big silos. We're supposed to have a strategic grain reserve and all that. Go and see what's happening. So I'm sorry to extend it to other areas because I think there's a pattern. Suddenly we just started taking over the infrastructure belonging to the old regional governments. Ahmadu Bello Stadium, Kaduna, owned by the Northern region, Liberty Stadium, Ibadan. And today if you go to those stadia, they are wasting, they are rotting. And we also apply that to other infrastructure relating to agriculture. That's why I'm saying, don't begin to buy tractors because you are not in a position to maintain tractors. Let the business people, have access to those tractors, either on higher basis, or give them resources to buy. They know what is good for them. Don't go and, buy quantity and then they are wasting somewhere, either federal secretariat or state government secretariat and so on and so forth. It's a very serious business. So another issue is this. Let every state come up with its own strategy to deal with the food situation. This federal, food security crisis, it doesn't work for everybody. It shouldn't be one size fits all. For instance, we know that there are states where some good things are happening. We know that Abia, for instance, has taken the bull by the horns in relation to the power. Because the national grid has been so discredited that it's not serving anybody. I know that Governor Obaseki is also doing some, energy intervention in Edo State, and those are things we should be encouraging. This rural electrification agency, it's not serving anybody. In my village, Ronigbe, we've not had electricity for up to 10 years. And it's the same with every other village. So this rural electrification agency is just there for the boys.
Well, there is a law now that empowers state governments to get into power generation, distribution, and what have you. So state governments have been empowered along that line. They should take up the responsibility of providing such resources.
The resources you are concentrating at the center now, know that those resources are not delivering results. They are not delivering results. It's inconsistent with modern development.
Let me add my voice as to what do we do. I think there is need for us to be more innovative. Innovation in producing food. Innovation in trying to make sure that Nigerians are food secure. Oxfam is doing something very small in Plateau State, and that was recognized by Oxfam in Africa, and we were invited for a competition to get more funding to see how we can scale that up. It's called urban food production, urban farming. Because we are looking at security being an issue in our rural communities where production is now, is now going to be too low. But people are moving to the urban centers. So how can we produce food in the urban cities? So Oxfam is trying something in Plateau State, which I'm happy to share that Plateau State government is quite excited about it. It's called urban food production, where you make use of rooftops or whatever space you have in your house and come up with ways of planting whatever you have to plant, either in bags or in whatever situation. You don't need too much space for it, and you don't need to have so much money to do it because it's just like in your backyard, but you're making the best use of that space to produce what you can eat. And you can produce and eat and even sell. So that is quite important, and I think we should look at that very well. I think but we are looking at trying to scale it up to other cities, especially Abuja, if it will work, because there are so many virgin lands in the cities that are being wasted, and they can be used to produce food. And what made us to think that direction was because of the COVID-19, where people were not even able to move to anywhere because we were in lockdown because of the health crisis. So people now thought, okay, how do we have food available even if we cannot move to any location from where we are or where we are produced? Like we're looking at the issue of the road issues from our villages. When fruit is produced, it's wasted in the villages because there are no roads. So I think we have to be more innovative. And I hope that this innovation that Oxfam is trying in Plateau State will be something that we can scale up to the whole of Nigeria if it becomes a winner for Oxfam in Africa, because that's what they are trying to, add some money to what we are doing in Plateau to move to other cities as well. So I think we have to be innovative in doing some of these things, because the process we are looking at, the mechanized agriculture, the smallholder farming, of course, all these things we have tried them in the past, but we are still struggling.
And even the cooperatives.
The cooperatives, we have, So I think we need to think outside the box, just like Oxfam is trying to do. What do we do? Because that's the question. We must do something. And I hope that this urban farming idea will be bought into by you and I. We have homes in Abuja here. We can convert our small spaces in the house into farms. You don't need to plant crops that will make your house look like a farm in the village, where you plant trees that grow up before you produce. You can do anything that your space can give you, and then you can get from there. You can sell whatever you produce and buy whatever that you need. That's the whole idea. Yeah. So innovation is key.
Well, at the end of the day, that is trying to make the best out of a bad situation.
Yeah.
But I always feel very uncomfortable about that. Why don't you redress the bad situation? It's very good, because a lot of people are doing it. In the neighborhood, you plant some. That's how the whole idea of Operation Feed the Nation also came. Whatever little space you have around you, But at the end of the day, for there to be an agricultural revolution, you must do what you call rural backward integration. A lot of people are in cities who should not be in cities. You must encourage them to go home, and along with that encouragement, you must provide the atmosphere that is secure enough for them. You must give them skills to be able to, farm. Because one of the reasons...
Isn't that a long-term approach?
Oh.
What he is talking about now is
I'm saying
now.
Yeah. What do we do?
It's a short-term approach.
But let's not lose sight of it, because there's a limit to which you can go with that.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Mr. Aguda, we have just about 1.5 minutes to go. I'd just like you to talk very briefly on what food aid is doing to the communities or to the countries where there is this food crisis.
Well, food aid can only support in the short term. I mean, we've been giving food in the Northeast since for over a decade. Has it reduced the food crisis? The answer is no. The government has even made it a policy now since last year till now, where they give palliatives. People even die because they want to collect a 25 kg of rice. Nasarawa is a good case where students died. Other states, you see people dying where they want to redeem that palliative. So for me, in as much we should have those safety nets to support communities who are vulnerable, we should look at the long-term sustainable strategy that will help our people, and that is government should lead the process. Enough of food aid. It doesn't help anybody. Even the governors in the Bay State, most of them are even kicking against you coming to give handouts. They want sustainable projects that can take up to 3-4 years, that will transfer skills, transfer knowledge, and equip these people to be able to withstand whatever shock that will come their way in the future. So that is what government should be looking at. And finally, I'm happy that the federal government declared a state of emergency on food. But have we seen any action taken by the federal government? And the kind of system we operate whereby if the federal government does not move, the state governments don't move. So the federal government has that responsibility. Having declared state of emergency on food crisis in this country, they should tell us what that declaration means, because we've not seen them in action. We've not seen them talking. The Minister of Agric is so silent these days. We don't hear him talking. And we are in crisis. He's not doing anything. We're not hearing him talking. So let him sit up. The federal government should sit up. The president should sit up. And the governors who also control the land and they control the space and have the resources should also key into some of these projects so that our people can be taken out of this drudgery and poverty that we find ourselves.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time. I've been with Dr. Williams Mafwalad, who is the lead program manager on food security and humanitarian response of Oxfam Nigeria. Thank you so much, Dr. Williams. Mr. Peter Oguda is a program coordinator, Civil Society for Poverty Eradication, CISCOP. Thank you for your time. And Mr. Tom Odemige is an expert on agriculture, a specialist in that area. Thank you for giving us your time and your experience on the field. That's our program for today. Please join us again when we bring you a fresh edition of People, Politics, and Power. Bye for now.